All right, so in this video, we're going to see what happens inside Russia during World War One. Basically, what happens is Russia has a revolution while World War One is going on. It's quite a busy time in European history. Now, a little background: the Tsar at the time was Tsar Nicholas II. His wife was the Tsarina Alexandria. And unlike most royal marriages, these two actually loved each other and trusted each other. And that means Alexandria has influence over Nicholas. So remember that. And they had multiple children, but only one son, Alexei, the heir to the Russian throne. But Alexei suffered from a medical condition called hemophilia. Actually, many royal monarchs in Europe suffered from hemophilia because they were all related. The Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, Kaiser William II of Germany, they were actually related. They were cousins. The royal families were all related. Anyway, so Alexei had hemophilia, and that means his blood did not clot. So a little cut or a little bruise could be a big problem. Our next character is this man, Rasputin, a Siberian peasant who claimed to have mystical powers. He said that he was a monk. He wasn't really. And there were all kinds of rumors about him at the time that he could find lost objects, communicate with animals, that he could heal people. Some thought he was a saint, some thought he was a devil, kind of depended who you asked. And this was kind of the heyday of spiritualism and occultism. And so when he comes to St. Petersburg, the capital, he's the talk of the town. And that's how he is introduced to the royal family. And the story goes, little Alexei had a tumble, and it was a bad one, and it looked like he might die. So Alexandria, in desperation, asked Rasputin to come to the royal palace to pray for Alexei to heal him. Rasputin wrote a letter back saying he didn't have to come to the palace because Alexei was going to be healed, and sure enough, he got better. So in Alexandria's mind, she has now associated the life of her son with Rasputin. Now, more than likely, it was just coincidence, but it doesn't matter. All that matters is what Alexandria thought. So she is now indebted to Rasputin. That means Rasputin has influence over Alexandria, who then has influence over the Tsar. And Rasputin begins to basically sell his influence to people. If he needed something done, you could go to Rasputin, hand him money, and then he would convince Alexandria, who would then convince the Tsar. Well, the war breaks out. Rasputin actually told the Tsar not to go to war. He thought it was a horrible idea, but the war breaks out, and the Tsar leaves for the front lines to lead the troops. And he leaves Alexandria in charge, which gives Rasputin even more power and influence. But then the war begins to go very badly for the Russians, so badly that they needed someone to blame, and Rasputin was the easy one to blame. As you can see in this political cartoon, which Rasputin is treating the Tsar and his wife like little children, almost like puppets. Got so bad that relatives of the royal family decide that Rasputin needs to be assassinated. They try to poison him and it doesn't work. It freaked him out so bad because he supposedly had mystical powers. They shot him and they tied his hands and feet and threw him into a frozen river. But then when the body was discovered, his hands were untied. So after being poisoned, after being shot, after being thrown into the frozen river, apparently somehow he managed to be aware enough to untie his hands. But he did die, and it solved nothing. It didn't make anything better. They're still losing the war. Things get so bad by March 1917 that protests begin in the streets of Petrograd, the capital. And it starts with women. They want their sons and husbands to come back. They're tired of the war. They want peace and they want bread. There's a lack of food. There's a lack of everything in Russia at this point. And at first, the Tsarina, Alexandria, does not take it seriously, writes a letter to the Tsar on the front lines, calling the protesters hooligans, like ruffians. It's no big deal. But then workers begin to join because what the women are protesting, right, as they chant through the streets, their chant is peace and bread. The workers want the same thing. They want peace. They want bread. The government still doesn't take it seriously until the workers begin to join the protest, till the soldiers begin to join the protest. Once the soldiers join the protest, the Tsar has no authority. That's how an absolutist czar rules. It's through the military and the police. And once they don't support you, you can't trust them, you have no power. So the czar has to step down. And a new temporary or provisional government is created led by Alexander Kerensky. And one of the first big decisions that this new government has to make is what to do about the war. And they make a mistake. The new government under Kerensky announces that Russia will stay in the war. Now, remember, as the women marched through Petrograd, their slogan was peace and bread, and the new government is giving them neither. And at the same time, there's a new political force in many of the Russian cities called Soviets. These are councils of workers and soldiers. And many of the Soviets have communist leanings, radical revolutionary leanings, and they have a lot of power because they are the workers and they are the soldiers. They make Russia work basically, and if you displease them, you are going to have trouble.